Dominican patriotism and nationalism alone doesn't prove true loyalty to the island. La patria dominicano. Only through ancestry and genealogy can someone prove if their ancestors were on the right side of Hispaniola history. ¿Y de dónde tú eres? ¿Qué lo tuyo? What's more important in understanding the history of the island is not only referring to the differences between the West End, Haiti, Los Haitianos, and the East End, Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic, but also exploring the differences between the North Coast, Cibao Valley, El Cibao, Santiago, and the South Coast of the island, Santo Domingo. This is the hidden history that I will unlock on this channel. La historia de Hispaniola. A new narrative and perspective will be formed. Ya tú sabes. In order to shine light on the dynamics of skin tone, wealth, servitude, and independence. Dímelo. Oye, this is the Hispaniola History Channel. La historia de Hispaniola, presented by David Rodriguez. Que lo que es, gloria a Dios, este hermano tuyo, David Rodriguez, con la historia de Hispaniola. Peace to all, this is your brother, David Rodriguez, with another episode of Hispaniola History Channel. And this is Extended Family, Dominican Native Ancestry Part 2. This is a follow-up to a video I did a couple of months ago. This is Part 2, just building off of that, going a bit into my family tree and extended family. So this is an image here of a brief abbreviated family tree. Does not include my siblings or any of my aunts and uncles. Primarily just dividing the family tree between my father's side of the family, Cirilo Rodriguez, and my mother's side of the family, Altagracia Tejera, and that's me in the middle. As you can see on the family tree on my father's side, he's the product of two Rodriguez family of Santiago and Rodriguez family of Mocha. My dad, Cirilo, was born in Salcedo. And over on my mother's side, she is the product of the Tejera and Brujon or Bruton family. Not so much information we have on the Brujons, except that we know that my mom decided to carry the Tejera surname, and so did her mother, my grandmother. So there was something special about that surname that they decided to hold on and carry on, and that's something that I will cover in future videos. But for right now, I just want to share a brief information about my family tree, particularly on my father's side, on the Rodriguez side, Santiago, Mocha, and San Francisco de Macorís. Some of my relatives on my father's side, starting with my grandmother, Ilada Rodriguez of Mocha. And then here we have my uncle, Rolando. And here we have my aunt, Elsa. And here we have an image of my father, Cirilo. And here is a picture of me. The range and skin tones of the Rodriguez family reflect the wider spectrum of demographics in most Dominicans with deep roots on the island. No image currently exists on my grandfather, Lalo Rodriguez, who looks similar to my father, but a little more darker in skin complexion. My grandfather, Lalo Rodriguez, who was born in Santiago de los Caballeros around the year 1900. And to point out, this is during what I like to call the golden age of the island, from the year 1865 to about 1915, because this is a time period where the island was going through a lot of upward mobility in terms of wealth, education, independence, religious freedom. Around 1915, as we know, that's when the United States entered the island through Haiti, and things become to change after that. So Lalo was born prior to all this happening and into a middle-class family. He owned and operated a restaurant up in Santiago and married Lada Rodriguez of Mocha, and they both had 7 children, and my father being one of those 7 children. His son, Cirilo, my father, continued in the food business by owning a farm and a grocery store in Santiago. So the accuracy of DNA genetic science, where it may be true that The results of DNA tests to determine your connection to dead ancestors that lived long ago is not totally accurate. There are other ways to use this information in order to arrive to similar conclusions. DNA science is used today to determine immediate relatives with high accuracy rates. It can be 99% accurate when determining parent-to-child relationships, but the same science can be used to connect with extended cousins who are living. In fact, these DNA test companies have connected family members in this manner. Also, a good tool for adoptees or those who are separated by birth to gain more information about their ancestry and siblings. Reconnecting families. So where the criticism of these companies being fake or scams is totally false, you have to know the science and how to apply it to your situation and use it to your benefit. With that being said, let's explore information regarding my genetics. So what are you seeing here is a chart that shows not all, but the extended family tree. This right here would be what represents my mother's side of the family, my mother's family tree. She goes back a couple of generations. We do have stories of family members arriving from Puerto Rico, and prior to that, arriving from Spain. My mother's side, the Tejeda family. Family members we know and those who are connected through genetics. But now moving over to my dad's side of the family tree, in which I will be covering more in this presentation, we can see is much more wider, much more deeper, much more people included. And on my father's side, we don't really have any stories of folks arriving from anywhere, especially from my grandmother's side, the Rodriguez family from Mocha. So the tree is comprised of known members on my father's side, combined with information provided by 23andMe, second and third cousins with genetic matches. So all genetic matches originate from one source, a majority of it, from my grandmother, Elada Rodriguez. The family tree is much larger on my father's side than it is on my mother's side, the Tejeda family. So in going through this information, I noticed there's a lot of Rodriguez. There's 118 second and third cousins named Rodriguez. The vast majority of these folks are somehow connected through my grandmother. Another good bit of information is in terms of extended family. It says the majority of DNA relatives are named Rodriguez. It said nearly all of my genetic matches are from people with classic Spanish surnames that are common in Latin America. Let's look. I got 75 people in my family tree named Rodriguez, 44 named Diaz, 42 named Fernandez, 41 named Perez, so on and so forth. Garcia, Hernandez, Gonzalez, Guzman, Martinez, Sanchez, Gomez, Lopez, Reyes, Pena, Cruz, Jimenez, Castillo, Amante, Nunez, and Espinal. So we see what we see and we know what we don't see. Moving further, these are genetic markers. It's just showing that due to the genetic connections that folks in these populations who may not have moved around have common genetic traits. And this is how they determine the science. So as you can see where they may have been, but it's showing you where they were not. The timeline 1700 shows a very strong genetic presence in Santiago and in the Cibao region. No genetic markers on the west end of the island, as stated earlier. Information provided by Ancestry DNA. Let's move on. Let's use 23andMe. The 23andMe match imprint of Hispaniola today shows a strong presence in Santiago, but no genetic imprints in Samaná or San Pedro de Macorís. Now, as we know, that's where the quote-unquote African Americans migrated to during the 1800s. So you can see there is no strong genetic markers there. As per 23andMe, as per Ancestry DNA, and as per MyHeritage, right? So this is what the science is telling me. Spanish cousins and extended family. As you can clearly see on the results provided by 23andMe, that all of my second and third genetic cousins have Spanish surnames. The same surnames common with old Spain and the early colonies of Latin America. What's also not visible in the results are American, French, British, Irish, or Italian surnames. Obviously, if I have any living first, second, or third cousins, extended relatives, or ancestors who were non-Spanish, it would have at least have a presence in the surnames of my genetic relatives. This is a clear indication of how deep the Spanish roots go, but also how intermarrying with other ethnicities was kept to a very minimal, especially on my father's side of the family, the Rodriguez family of Santiago and Mocha. The genetic markers also conclude that this family had remained close-knit, set apart, and minimized interaction with outside communities. Despite the mixing of the gene pool over the centuries, the Spanish and native blood is still alive and strong within the descendants of those with deep roots on the island. And with that, folks, this is Extended Family, Dominican Native Ancestry Part 2. I hope you enjoy this presentation. This is your brother David Rodriguez with another episode of Hispaniola History Channel. Who were the Moors? What is a Moor? A people who rose to prominence in Spain and are credited for the Renaissance period and bringing Europe out of the Dark Ages. The Moors of Spain are the foundation to the Western world, but their legacy continues to get little representation in Hollywood movies.
What personal qualities do you bring to the role of what has been described as the princely Moor?
I actually am representing a race of people who were civilized at a time when, in the Middle Ages, Europe was a rather backward place.
This lost history has been resurrected over the last 100 years by scholars of the Afro-American community.
Because you cannot imagine what an impact the Moors had on Europe.
This new consciousness has inspired a great number of books, new teachers, and most recently, a number of documentaries about the Moors, all targeted towards the African American community, with Black Americans gravitating towards the idea that they may be descendants of the great Moors of Spain. Where do Afro-Latinos fit into this proud legacy? More specifically, are Dominicans aware or even identify with this Moorish history? Are Dominicans with deep ancestral roots in Hispaniola the true descendants of the Moors of Spain? Los Moros de Hispaniola, the Moors of Hispaniola, presented by David Rodriguez.